Hey everybody, I'm Paul Wilke.
And I'm David Oro, and you're listening to The Embargoed, the greatest PR podcast of all time.
Damn straight. There's always something to talk about and a point to make.
And we're going to do it when we want, which was supposed to be every other week, but it's been a while since we talked to you.
Never every other week. Whether it's tech, business, sports, or your mama, we're going to cover it.
Especially your mama. It all comes from the point of view of public relations, reputation, and communications.
We're all about punching stodgy PR in the face.
So that's right. So sit back, strap in, and let's get it on. Today is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. An unusual day for us. We don't normally tape on Tuesdays, but we tape on the other T's, Thursdays. But hey, we're here, and we're here because, well, our guest couldn't find a different day to do the recording. That's how we're doing it. What's up, Paul? How are you? It's been a while since we gotten together.
It has, and you've been through a couple things. One of the things, so you had COVID.
I had COVID again. Damn it, I got it again. I didn't want to talk about it. I tested last week. Actually, so first of all, it is conference season. So I had a big event last week. It was Dr. Con down in Los Angeles. The client was there. Everybody was there. Industry people were there. All that stuff. Saturday, I was still feeling sick. Last Saturday. Sunday was kind of weird. Just rested. Monday, I worked all the way through. And I said, you know what? I get on a plane on Tuesday morning. I better just check. 4 o'clock on Monday. Tested positive for the damn thing. And I was like, shit. I can't get on a plane. Had to cancel flights too. That's the next 2 hours trying to figure out how somebody was going to cover my ass in Los Angeles that week. But we got through it. I ended up working. It was okay, COVID. I got some residuals. I stopped testing positive. I didn't take any Plaxivit or anything like that. I'm here. It's the world we live in today.
We're glad you're back and better. And fortunately, as we've learned, being on the embargo does not give you immunity to COVID.
We talked about it.
We tried. I am thrilled to have our guest on today. I've had the pleasure of knowing this guy for about 12 years now. And the topic we're covering is something he and I have been talking about for most of that time. His name is Ken Shuman from Interconnected Strategies. He's worked for some amazing companies over the years, Trulia, Rivian, Pindrop, to name a few. And he's doing some great stuff, and he's going to talk to you more about that. Ken, how you doing today?
Hey, Ken.
Hey, David. Thank you. Nice warm welcome. I'm excited to be here with you guys. This is great, and I hope I have immunity. I got my vax update last week, doubled up, flu shot and COVID shot, same arm, same time, one trip. I'm ready for the next 3 to 6 months.
Well, so I'm going to get super immunity here pretty soon. I'm going to take that same shot in a couple of weeks when they tell me to do it. I'm going to be like already COVID out and getting all those things. Ken, Paul talks to about knowing you for years, 12 years or more. I don't know where you guys met. Paul seems to be all these people all over the place. And I feel like I know a lot of people. Then Paul, all of a sudden, Paul in his quiet way knows everybody. Somehow, some way, he's connected with folks. Agreed. You and I have multiple people that would know each other, and like 3, 4, 5, 6 people have said, "Oh, do you know Ken? You know Ken?" I'm like, I never met the motherfucker. I'm like, who is this guy? It's nice to finally meet you. So
I agree. As two old guys in this industry who've been at it for 25 plus years, I don't know how we haven't bumped into each other across paths. So this has been a long time coming, I think.
This is a full circle moment. We met 12 years ago, and I was speaking at an IPO conference at a PR firm right after we'd taken Splunk public. And he was about to work on an IPO. And now, full circle, Ken's got this great event coming up in November titled Gearing Up to Go Public. It's at NASDAQ in San Francisco. We're going to dive right into it. But Ken, this is, like I said, full circle moment. This is you running the game. I love it.
Yeah, this is phenomenal for me. When I was getting ready to go down the IPO path at Trulia, I was on a mission to meet as many smart people who had walked that path before me. And I had a gentleman by the name of Matt Flegel on my staff who said, you got to meet this guy, Paul. So Paul, as you mentioned, David, knows everyone. This guy said to me, let me introduce Paul to you. So Paul, I think stopped by our office just as a come see Matt, stop by. And then I did go and see him, and not only full circle, I believe it was at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, which is where your panel was, that I saw you that night.
I believe
and we ended up going out for coffee afterwards, and I believe heavily in building an IPO network. No one should walk down this path alone. You speak a language that wink twice if you can answer this one. You don't have to say exactly what you're doing, but people understand, and having a strong network like that's incredible. And ever since I took Trulia public, I did the same thing Paul did for me. I'd meet with people. I'd hang out with folks and help them prepare for the road ahead. And now I get to pull a whole conference together to really demystify the IPO process. I am going to bring people in from the PR world, from the IR world, from the legal world, and every single panelist, presenter, fireside chat participant will have done an IPO. And I think it's a first of its kind conference. I don't know anyone or any educational platform where you can come get this perspective of all three tracks, how they work together, and hear from folks who have been there and done that.
So usually this is a pretty big process that the banks own. And usually you hear about Goldman Sachs, and all the big banks that are taking companies public, and then they go on this road show. And people forget that communications is a big part of that. And I don't think people really understand the role that it plays. And this is what you guys are going to be covering in this whole process?
Yeah. So I talk about the IPO process of 7 stages of communication. And the first stage starts 12 to 18 months before you're even talking with bankers, making your selection, thinking about going public, which stock exchange. So it starts early from a comm side. Your corporate messaging. Do they understand your business and how you make money? I think you guys probably remember Zynga's IPO got delayed because the SEC didn't understand their accounting. Well, if the SEC doesn't understand your accounting, how's the media supposed to understand how you make money and why your IPO is going to be successful, right? So you start early. And then as you start working closer to it, you start to see the CFO building out their IPO team. And all of a sudden you have a director of IR that you can partner with, and they're doing the same thing. You're helping the media understand who you are, where you fit in that world. IR starting to talk to the analysts behind the scenes. You got your general counsel working with the selection of bankers and filing forms. And I always tell people, A, start early, and B, get involved early. Because the more that you have a purview to and you get to see and you're in those meetings and conversations, the better job you're going to do running the communications process externally and internally. And this conference will give you that full view of how do I earn a seat at the table? That's my keynote. 10 steps to earn a seat at the table. Number 1 is starting with trust. And you got to earn that day one at the job from the CEO and the general counsel. And I've got a 10-step process, which I will unveil to say, this is how you earn a seat at the table, be part of all the bankers, be there for the banker selection. Find out why they're pitching you, how they see your IPO going. You're going to learn from them on how you might want to position things to the media even. Don't write the S1. Let the bankers and lawyers do it. But make sure you're involved in the process, at least in the investor letter and maybe the write-up of what makes you unique and different. The other 178 pages, leave the legal into the bankers, right? But if you're not involved in the process, they don't know where you can make an impact and you don't know what they're working on. So the whole idea is to figure out how to work with them, get involved early, own the process.
So I want to follow up on that, Ken, because for a lot of people, and particularly if somebody hasn't gone through an IPO process before, and I imagine this was you at Trulia, like what it's as if like you have this executive leadership, and if you don't have that seat at the table, and usually there is probably one comms person there, so, and I've seen that happen a lot of times, or brought in later, which is probably not a good case. But how do you teach yourself this, right? So you have this obviously event coming along, but to me it just sounds like it would seem almost maddening to be involved in that process if people aren't doing it correctly.
I'm trying to make it less maddening, right? For me, I had to send LinkedIn in-mails to Danny Dudek at Zynga and say, hey, can I take you to lunch? I met Paul, picked his brain. I met John Franklin, who was at Abernathy McGregor at the time, who was doing lots of financial communications. I had a thirst to go out and find this knowledge because I wanted to be proactive, and I wanted to go to my CEO and say, hey, here's all the things we should be thinking about and doing. So being proactive and going in with a plan, it's also part of what helps you earn a seat at the table. Most founders have never done an IPO either. If you can help them be successful and take the lead and say, hey, CEO, here's 5 things we should be thinking about today, and here's what's going to be happening 6 months down the road for us. And again, I believe all organizations that the comms person should report directly to the CEO. I love CMOs, but again, they don't fully understand the way we see the world and the impact we put on organizations.
You know, it's funny you said that. I had a client one time, and this notion of working with the CEO and being a trusted advisor to them and letting them know how you can help and what could come down the pipe. I was working with a client, a startup. They were getting acquired by a major company. And afterwards, we went through the whole thing. And, about a year later, we were sitting down having lunch. He said it was the most stressful thing I'd ever done. And to me, it was like, wait a minute, I remember I was there for part of that, and I wasn't in every meeting, but at that time, it just made me realize he was getting hit from everywhere: legal, employees, investors, partners. What is going on?
Yeah.
And, the role that I probably could have played, and I did play, but not in a way that was more proactive, was like, I could be there for you to help you communicate this through. And I think as communicators, you forget that your role as a communicator is to help communicate these things. The role as the legal guy is doing these things, and the CEO or that leadership team is literally getting hit by everything, and their brain is going crazy too.
The little dirty little secret about IPOs is most of the people going through the IPO process have never been through an IPO. So Ken got it right by just absorbing information and knowing what to expect. The people that know the IPO process are the bankers and the people at the stock exchange. Everyone else, chances are they haven't done one, or maybe they've done one, several years ago. So having that knowledge base puts you farther ahead than you realize.
Yeah, and then evolving, right? Like SPACs were a whole new thing. Paul and I got to work on one together. It's different. So again, even though we have this knowledge, you have to have a thirst for knowledge and continually go out and learn. Get close with your general counsel during the process, because guess what? It's different papers that are being filed. There's different green shoots in the way investors are staying in or staying out. And if we're going to be successful in helping companies through this process, it's up to us as communicators to be that advisor, not just a comms advisor, but a business advisor, and to think 360 about the employee stuff that you mentioned. It's crucial. If you're leaving your employees behind on this journey and they're not informed, that's why they've joined you. For them, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as well. So I think it's super important that you CEOs have the awareness of, I need a strong advisor. And for comms folks, if you want to rise to the challenge, go get smart. Pretend like you've done it before. Pull together a plan of action proactively and lay it out for your manager, whether it's the CMO or the CEO, and ask to then present to a full management team at one of their meetings if you do not sit on the management team. Start to wedge yourself in, and that will open more doors.
So let's talk about the IPO market today. So Ken, I think you're gearing up for a busy season, right? So we had Instacart go out recently.
Yes.
I mean, it's been dead in 2023. Let's just admit it, right? And so we had
dead in 2022 as well. It's been a long 18 months. We have not seen much action.
And that's our incentive
in 20 years, actually.
Yeah, that's our incentive in this industry, right? And this is what's created wealth, and particularly in our area, the Bay Area. It's like, do good, make some money, run, get a business up and running. And even if you're not making money, you can probably go public, but it's been quiet. What do you see happening?
I mean, I think the market's reset itself in that free money is gone. So companies can't just keep going back to the well. So you have to first, companies for the last 18 months had to change the way they were operating. They weren't going to get their next $100 million round. They had to start showing a path to profitability, and they had to show that they could be a standalone, self-sustaining business. And that's been the biggest change. And if you look at the 2 or 3 companies that have tested the IPO market recently, they've all come in with really strong financial statements and a path to growth. Now, is that enough in today's market? I'm not so sure. We saw 3 happen. 2 have dropped below price. Klaviyo's held nicely.
What names are they, Ken?
Instacart and ARM have both fallen below. ARM just got its first set of initiations from analyst reports, came out strong with upside to get back to the number they were at. So the analysts seem to be welcoming them, which is nice. Instacart was a unique story. They had a lot going against them. Their orders were flat. Their marketing business has been skyrocketing. I mean, it was like an $800 million business last year in terms of like their marketing world and their paid advertising, which is phenomenal growth for them. And it's something that the grocery industry is very used to. You pay for end caps, you pay for shelf space, right? But I think investors should be concerned about growth stopping. That's a scary proposition. And they also had some very unique clauses in their IPO because employees have been waiting a long time for liquidation. There wasn't the standard 6-month lockup period. 2 months. That's it. Employees can sell 35% of their shares after 2 months. The stock's already below IPO price. Now what happens if the market gets flooded in November with a whole set of shares? That's a scary proposition for investors. So you saw a lot of institutional buying come into them. Pepsi took $175 million, and Andreessen bought a ton more stock, and one other of the VCs did too. And it makes you kind of take notice of like, were they ready and would the market support them without that? Valuation was down almost 75% from 40 million to 9 million or something like that, or down 50%. So the VCs were actually averaging their losses from their private investment. Like the whole thing was a little peculiar. It wasn't your typical standard IPO. And the B2B Klaviyo one has been very successful. And I think there is a lot more B2B SaaS companies in the pipeline that are probably sharing what they've seen. I think the consumer IPO and the D2C type stuff is going to, I don't think there was a clear signal that the market's ready for that yet. And honestly, I don't know how many more tech IPOs we'll see in Q4. I think very few, if any. I think Q1 will be a fresh start, and we'll see what happens. There's a lot of companies in the pipeline. So who's going to be the first, right? Trulia came out after the Facebook debacle. Facebook went public in May, I believe, of 2012. Jobs Act was introduced. All of a sudden, you could file privately. Trulia took advantage of that, the first company to do it. And why we decided to go was we actually had a mobile advertising story, and that's what Facebook was getting killed on. So we knew that where their deficiencies were was a strength for us. So we were one of those companies that said, you know what? We'll be one of the first to go test the market, even though some of the most recent IPOs weren't performing. And that's what we're going to need to see. Someone step up in Q1, or a couple companies step up in Q1, willing to take that leap of faith and have confidence in the business they built and the growth trajectory ahead. And it's going to take some finessing from the comm side and from the market to go launch a successful. I think the nice part is the market wants it, LPs want it, the VC industry needs it. So at some point, we'll get there again.
One of the things we had been, I think we started talking about it before the call, is what are some of the interesting IPOs or interesting things you've observed over the years, whether it's, stumbling out of the gate or having a great IPO or things done well or not. What are some of the things that stick out for you?
First, the PSA. Don't buy stock in the first couple weeks it launches. I'm not a chart guy. I'm not a historic guy, but I can tell you, people love an IPO run-up, but there always seems to be a rundown immediately after that. And a lot of people are like, I'm going to jump on it first day or second day. And ask them how it turned out for them. So, no matter what, every IPO is going to have a hype cycle. And I tell people to avoid the hype cycle.
The first days are not set up for the casual investor to succeed. It's set up for, the VCs and the people who are early investors.
Yeah. Some of the other weird things I find is I think Facebook may have been one of the first, but this whole bringing the bell to your company versus going to New York and experiencing these institutions. It is a culture thing. Yeah. Executives want to be with their employees and not off in a White Castle in New York ringing a bell and being part of it. But I will tell you, and I think you both know this, an IPO is a branding event more than anything. It's a financial event. It's a company milestone, but it is a branding event. And there is no better place to make a splash than this place called New York City. And whether you're taking advantage of Experience Square out in front of the stock exchange, or whether you're on billboards all over the heart of New York City, taking your moment out of there so you can do it in Menlo Park, or you can do it within the floor of Zynga with all of your employees looking around you. I never quite understood why that fad or trend took off.
I gotta tell you, Ken, I agree with you. So I've had the opportunity to ring and close at the New York Stock Exchange and open at NASDAQ. And, when you call it a branding event, it is, right? And not only is it a branding event, the NASDAQ and the new NYSE have made it a branding event. NASDAQ literally has a billboard in Times Square. If you're in the room, they're going to put you out on the billboard.
They both do great jobs. They both do fantastic jobs.
You watch CNBC or any of the news channels, every opening bell, every closing bell, whatever company's up on stage is up there. And from personal experience, it's fun. And Paul, I should pull my NASDAQ photo for you that I have here. And you can show it on screen.
I love that.
Yeah. Actually, it's not NASDAQ. It's the New York Stock Exchange. I apologize. But it is actually a fun event. And what I think people forget about when people pull up, we're going to do the bell ringing in our offices in San Francisco because we support our employees. Everything I've heard and everything I've seen on a share from a company being in New York City, you go to LinkedIn. Oh, my company was in Times Square today. I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of my CEO. And half the time companies bring probably 50 to 100 people there for a big old party anyway. And so like your leaders are there. It is a big employee morale boost. I would say, and there's very few moments in time that you get to do that, right? Why ruin it in your home office? Go to New York.
It's an adrenaline rush that cannot be equaled on, in our business. You can't. And it's a great equalizer. Both the CEO and the intern who gets to go have this great experience, this great adrenaline rush, and a sense of pride and a sense of ownership.
Yeah. It is a culmination of a lot of work, right? And so most of these companies, if you're lucky, you toiled for a couple of years. If in reality, you're probably 7 to 15 years into it before you actually get to this point of selling. So.
Yeah, I will always recommend a company get their New York City moment.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean executives can't stay back. At Trulia, we found a great balance. We had some people back to lead the morning toast. We didn't take all of the exec management team. Everyone sacrificed for the good of the culture and the company. And we had folks in different offices, different locations. We flew executives out to our Denver call center because no one wants to be a stepchild. Everyone wants to feel part of it. And you can make employees feel part of it. You have live feeds coming from the stock exchange, so your CEO can still address your employees from the floor the morning of. Like, there are ample opportunities to do right by your employees and make it a huge part of your day in corporate culture, but also take advantage of that branding moment in the city that never sleeps, right? Like, there is a reason the heartbeat of New York is the home of the media world, the financial world. They want to claim the tech world, but let's be honest, they're not there. And I don't know if they ever will be. But that's okay, because it's thriving and it is good to see that, right? But go to New York. Don't skip it.
So, Ken, we got a few more minutes here. You've got an event called Gearing Up to Go Public, November 7th. In San Francisco at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. It's a one-day conference, Demystify the IPO Process. Ken gave you one tip today. It was called trust. He's got 9 more to give away for a price. So show up at his event and find out more from there. Before we go, Ken, we like to have a little fun. And it looks like Paul put something in our little agenda today called Pet Peeves of the Week. Paul, you want to cover this really quick?
Very, very timely. What are our pet peeves of the week? We've got we always have a handful, but I think that we've got 2 that are sort of interconnected with each other. And let's just start with RFPs. They are the bane of our existence for several reasons. Ken, you want to chime in on this one?
Yeah. I do. But real quick before I do, David, thank you for that wrap up. And listen, Paul is a moderator. Paul will be chatting and leading a conversation about stories and travels of that public to private. So if you're a fan of Paul, you're a fan of the show, use coupon code IPO23 ICS and you'll get 20% off the purchase of the ticket. You'll get a chance to hang with Paul and be part of the day, and I'd love to meet you.
You said Paul, and oh my God, I'm going now. So,
as if you guys don't see enough of each other, right? So listen, RFPs, they're a real fucking problem. That's what RFP stands for.
That's a good one. I love
that. 20 years ago, we would make interns work for free. Luckily, we now pay interns. We evolved as an industry. Somehow, RFPs, everybody wants you to work for free, give away great ideas, to maybe have a chance to win. And sometimes they invite 3 agencies, sometimes 5, sometimes 7. Well, if you're asking for 2 free ideas from 7 agencies, you're walking away with a whole year's full of ideas 1 month at a time. And I fully will not participate in a full RFP. I will turn it down and say no. If it involves we want to meet you, get to know you, have 1 or 2 conversations, I thrive and love that, because for me, it is a 2-way street. I am interviewing a client as much as they are interviewing me. So it's time for this industry to evolve, not ask agencies to do free work. And more importantly, if you do participate in it, get back to people. Don't ghost them. Don't leave them wondering what went wrong. Don't give no budgets if you're going to send an RFP out and say, oh, give me a small, medium, and large program with no guidance on what that even means. So, like, if you got to do it, at least be fair with people. But in reality, write a 1-pager. Say, hey, this is what we're facing as a company. We'd love to get on the phone and chat with you for a half hour, 45 minutes to see how you see the world in this area. And if there's a spark and if there's a moment of I could work with this person, I'm always willing to do a follow-up interview or present a little bit more. But the formal RFP process can burn and burn in hell, if you ask me. Because
I got a story on that too. There was, some of these budgets, particularly if you're consulting, you could take $1 to $20,000 budget or whatever it is. I don't mind. I'll work, especially if I like the person. But I remember this one company out of nowhere had got no business sending out a 10-page RFP about who they were and what they were doing. And the budget was like $5,000. Like, it literally was, they wrote the RFP if it was $100,000 a month budget. And they wanted you to fill out all these things and all that stuff. And it was just like, no, go away. I was like, that's a total waste of time. And you probably sent this to 30 people and we could see right through it.
I can tell you, out of my last 12 years, when I've worked with Paul and brought Paul in to be a partner with me, not once have I ever said, hey, Paul, fill out this RFP. There's 5 other agencies competing for the spot. I wanted to make sure you're involved. I've gone to my CEO or I go to my clients now and say, hey, based on what you need, there's 3 agencies that we should be working with. I'd love for you to meet them all and let's figure out who is best. I did it when I was internal at Pindrop, when I was at Rivian, when I was at NerdWallet, and now I do it in my role. I help companies find the right partners, and then I help build programs and manage those agencies. Yeah. And I will never put anyone through it. And if you don't know who the good people are you should be targeting, and you're just pulling 7 names off of the list of the biggest agencies or the 3 best agencies in this vertical, but you don't actually have any insights to who they are or why, you're going about your selection wrong. Yeah. Start with 3 people you know and you like that could make an impact, and then figure out which of those 3 are right, and don't put them through the rigmarole of a full RFP.
Wise words. And then I've gotten mine down to 2-page responses when people are asking about capabilities and possible ideas of what we can do. But the one thing you said was ghosting. That still takes an hour or 2 to put together, depending on what we're looking at and researching. And if you don't get back to us, I'm pissed. I had somebody tell me, like, she chased me for it for 3 times. I finally got it to her, and we agreed and met the deadline, all that. I haven't heard from her in 3 months.
I talked to Paul about this the other day. The hurry up and wait. Can we talk with you tomorrow? You rearrange your schedule. You do that because we're in a service industry. We want to launch ASAP. We need to get out there. You get on the phone. You make it happen. You send a follow-up. I do a 1-pager. You're nice to do it too. I do a 1-pager. High-level outline of what we would do and what it would cost and how we would go about it. More times in 2023 have I been ghosted than in my first 4 years building this company. And I don't know if it's because people are hurry up and then there's no budget and they're not getting approvals or whatever it is, but there's no excuse to not follow up and say, hey, we had to hit the brakes. The product's not ready. Hey, budget got shifted to Q1 2024. We're going to hold off on a big launch this year. Give us some follow-up.
Yeah. Or, hey, we picked somebody else.
And on top of that, one of the things I always try to do, even if I'm getting ghosted, I'll bug until I hear back from them. But, my thing is I want to know who I lost to. I mean, just to know what I need to do differently or know who we're competing with. Yep. And as often as I get ghosted, I swear to God, I don't think I can count on one hand how many times I've written back to a bid we've lost and say, hey, who'd you go with? They don't tell us. And, I've got to dig and find out on my own, which is no fun either. But, it helps everybody.
Yep.
There it is. There it is. Our pet peeves of the week. Real fucking problem was Ken Shuman.
Trademark. I'm going to turn it into a shirt, I think. I'm going to wear it to every PR conference I attend. RFPs are a real fucking problem.
So guys, Ken, I'm going to put the code in the lower left or right so you can scan it and get more information about your event. But, I'm excited to be a part of it. For those of you who want to attend, it's going to be a great event. And on top of that, we're grateful for having you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to meeting you in person, David, next time around.
All right, man. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
See
Take
you.
care, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
It's as easy as RFP.